What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to talk about what's happening for this week so far for the markets, what you should be watching for as time goes on. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. Anyways, so what's happening to the market so far? As you guys can tell, SPY's on a bit of a downtrend right here, making lower highs. And we are testing these lows right here, so we'll have to see what kind of reaction we get. There's a very clear left shoulder here, ahead and then the right shoulder. So this opens the door for more risk of downside. After the downside we got, there might be an attempt to rebound just temporarily, but that could be followed by even more downside as we haven't completed the head and shoulders, and because of some bearish signals that still remain. Now, even if that does happen and the market does see more downside, there's going to be other factors out there that could cause the market to bounce later on, and it's going to be determining whether or not this market gets that bounce or not. So let's talk about what those factors are and how this could affect the markets. Just know that for the week, okay, tomorrow is going to be Monday. We have Comtech announcing earnings and then very, very minor earnings after that. And then Tuesday is also going to be quite quiet, nothing too crazy. But once we get to Wednesday of this week, we have JP Morgan Chase, we have Citi, we have BlackRock, Wells Fargo, Goldman Sachs all announcing their earnings. And then for Thursday, we have TSMC, United Health Group, Bank of America, and Morgan Stanley. Lots of big bank earnings for the week, so watch for volatility because of that. So make sure you guys are ready and prepared just to be safe. On top of all of that, I want to mention that for tomorrow, it's going to be Monday, January 13th, 2025. At 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the 3 and 6 month bill auctions. This could cause some volatility as well, but there's nothing too crazy coming out for Monday. On Tuesday, on the other hand, we have PPI data coming out, so that might cause more volatility, giving us a good amount of insights on how wholesale inflation is looking. And then for Wednesday, we're going to be looking for CPI data. That's going to be very impactful for yields. It's going to have an effect on yields because right now we're seeing the 10-year and even the 20-year just going up like crazy. They're going up in anticipation of the risk of high inflation and because of what the Fed has announced about not as many cuts coming into next year, or not next year, this year technically. So with that being said, if we get a low CPI, if CPI is below expectations, if it looks good, that could cause yields to essentially slow down, and that could help the market reverse. But if we get the opposites, if we get another very hot CPI, there's going to be a lot more fear in the markets, and we could see yields continue to rise, which tends to be more bearish for the markets. So that's why CPI is going to be a very, very big factor affecting the way the market's going to be moving. So just keep that in mind. Besides that, there's nothing else too crazy for the week, so get ready for CPI by Wednesday. For now, the market's at fear that's making up the majority of sentiment. We're not at extreme fear quite yet, which opens the door for a little bit more downside. But I do believe, and this is my honest opinion, even if we do get more downside, I think that with the new administration coming into power very soon with inauguration and such, and then with earnings coming out, as long as they're not too bad, the market could still get a bounce later. I don't think we're ready yet for the overall balance, but we're getting closer. So I want to be very blunt about that. And I'll explain that on the charts in just a few minutes. Momentum's at extreme fear. We're very close to our 125 daily moving average. If SPY does get close to it, we do love to bounce near it or close to it. So we are getting close to that area. The put to call option ratios at fear. We're starting to see a lot more put buying. As that happens, we do sometimes see the market kind of bounce just a bit to squeeze shorts. But then once again, the market could still dip more later on to form its bottom, which I think it's going to be doing very, very soon. The volatility is at neutral. The VIX has been climbing quite a bit, so I think the VIX will top soon as well. So I'll explain what I think is going to pan out. So what do I mean by the market may bounce it, but simultaneously I see downside? Here's how I'll explain it, okay? So for the short term, just keep this in mind when we look at these levels. SPY has this support at 577 to 580. And as of right now, we're trying to hold this. And we're also close to not only a key support, but typically what we tend to see around this area is a little rebound. Similar to what we saw on Friday, there might be an attempt to rebound off of this, but then there's going to be that risk of us eventually coming back down. And I think that this could be completing this head and shoulders. We have this left shoulder here, we have a head, then we have this right shoulder. So we could eventually come back down. And then even if we do get some kind of dump like this, if SPY does complete the head and shoulders, I would turn bullish after that because if we make a higher low compared to this, this could still be an overall larger trend. And I think that with the new administration coming up and with the big earnings coming out, as long as they're not too bad, this could slowly try to see a very, very nice reversal and try to make a very, very nice run heading into the month of February, just like this. I think there's going to be a nice rally that's coming. I say that because there's been many instances where the market did dump really hard only to get a big rebound. And that's what's been happening because we're technically still in bull markets territory. This is just a pullback in a bigger bull market. That's how I would basically describe this. That's how I see this. Unless we get a very, very bad CPI, we continue to see lots of bad numbers and earnings end up flopping us, then my view will change. But that's not a guarantee, especially given the fact that there's going to be a lot of optimism with the next administration coming and a lot of changes, at least to policy. So my view is simple. What's going to happen tomorrow? I think that SPY has this nice base around 577 to 580. We touched it right here. We bounced. We came close to it. We bounced. We came close to it right here, and we're seeing some buyers trying to hold it. So I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow SPY gets a little rebound like this, all the way back up towards 584, the resistance from Friday. But there's no guarantee we just keep going. We might actually come short. And every time we do pump, we do get these rejections when you look at the 4 hour. So it could be a move just like this as SPY eventually finds its bottom. So we might be looking for a pop back into the 580s, but the move may fail. 584 to 585 could be coming, but then we could reject very soon and make a move back down towards the 577 area. I also think SPY is going to form a final bottom soon, and this could be opening up the opportunity for this to happen maybe by the end of the week. Hopefully, I would love to see this just bottom as fast as possible so we can start this rally back up. I find that to be the most likely move, a little rebound attempt before we get that rejection. I also want to mention the reason I say this is because when you look at the daily time frame, right? If you look at the daily on SPY, um, it looks a little bit more bearish, especially as we haven't fully come down to where this imbalance is over here, and the head and shoulders is still present, so it's technically still bearish. And then the weekly is also quite bearish. We're continuing to reject, and there's going to be that risk of us continuing to fall. We're near the 20 EMA on the weekly, by the way. So, we do love to bounce near it. For example, if you look at what happened for the last couple of months, uh, even back in like 2023, we came a little bit below our 20 EMA only to get bought back up. Here we hit the 20 EMA, we got bought back up. We came a little bit below it, and then we just got bought back up. So I think that what's going to happen is the same thing essentially. I think that's we might rebound tomorrow, then dip a little bit below our 20 EMA, maybe close to where this imbalance is for the head and shoulders to complete at 570. Then we could be looking for a big bounce after that. I find that to be the most likely possibility. But we'll see just to be safe. So make sure you watch your levels. So, by the way, if SPY does not hold 577, we're bearish. And if we get back above 585, we could turn a little bit more bullish. I think we pushed about 585 or so, then we get a rejection that aligns very close to where our EMAs happen to be. So look for 585, previous resistance, previous support becoming resistance, and rejection as the most likely possibility. On ES, very similar setup. So if you zoom out of ES, you have a left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder. I also want to mention that we have this resistance around 5880. I wouldn't be surprised if we dump all the way down to about 5840. Then we try to bounce to 5880 to 5900. And then we could end up looking for a big move like that. So for tomorrow, we're looking for a move like this where we try to push for 5900 or so. Then we could be looking for this ultimate move back down here, all the way back down to where we bottom in the lower 5800s. And I think that this is where we're going to be forming a bottom, especially where this imbalance is. And then we're going to be looking for a big rebound to reclaim our EMA. So a move just like this, a little rebound tomorrow, more potential downside for the week, especially depending on CPI. But then earnings could help this try to bounce, especially as buyers return. And after Mr. Trump's inauguration, that could affect things as well. For Nvda, the same thing is going on. We have this big rejection on the 4 hour, the daily, and the weekly, which are all showing some weakness. But just know that we love to try to retest our resistance after we get a break of it. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a retest of about 138 to 140 on Nvidia. And then this could kind of form like a head and shoulders like pattern where we get a rejection back down to about 133, if not below that to like 130. So somewhere in this range could be tested, but then we could be looking for a big bounce after that. So a move just like this, that's what I'm essentially going to be looking for between these key supply and demand areas. And this could be forming a much larger kind of like inverse head and shoulders right here that's still developing. So look for a rebound tomorrow. It's a 138 to 140, then a potential rejection back down as the week progresses. Then we could be looking for a bounce after that ultimately. For Bitcoin, the same setup is going on. If you look at the 4 hour, we're trying to rebound. We're ultimately in a range. We like to get bought back up around the 91,000 area, but we like to reject off 100,000. We have a left shoulder here. We have a head, then we have a right shoulder. But just know this, we're making lower highs here. We had a high up here. We came down. We had a lower high, came back down. We could attempt to rebound towards the 95,400 area or above. So I do anticipate that we're going to rebound right back up here to about 96,000 or so. Then we could reject and start dipping back down towards 92,500 in a move just like this. Just keep that in mind, guys. That's going to be the most likely possibility. For other stocks out there, such as Tesla, Tesla is technically on a it's on a small downtrend technically if you look at the last couple of weeks, but there is good news for the Tesla investors out there. We're holding the support quite well so far. So I just hope we hold this. Tesla's very much affected by the news. It's kind of tricky to predict sometimes, but as long as we hold this trend line, we could slowly push our way up for the 400 area. And we'll see if we get one more drop after CPI comes out or something like that. If we get one more pullback back down to form our little temporary bottom near this 200 EMA, then we could be looking for a big bounce in Tesla after that towards the end of the year, especially when Trump gets inaugurated. That's going to be more positive for Tesla. So keep that in mind, guys. We're making lower highs right now. We might try to ride this trend line up for the next couple of days, try to get back to the 400s, but then we'll see if we end up losing support to get one final drop before we get a big bounce. I hope that's not too complicated. For now, just look and see this trend line if we could hold this for the temporary time being to push for 400, and we'll see if we get a rejection off there just temporarily. And I think that we're going to be forming a very, very nice structure as time goes on. On NQ, we have a very similar setup. We're making lower highs right here. As you guys can see, we're making lower highs. Um, we're at the support at 21,000. We held it so far. So I anticipate there's going to be some kind of rebound, but there's going to be a risk of us continuing to fall because of this bearish wedge here. And that's where we're going to likely form some kind of bottom soon. So what I think is going to happen is we're going to try to get a bounce to about 21,200, maybe a little bit below that. And then we're going to be looking to see if we retest this wick right here. That might be retested, taking us back down to about the 20,800 area before we get some kind of break. And we want to break out of this resistance for us to see an official breakout. I'll be looking for a move just like that to see if we get a breakout like this. So look for a rebound and rejection for us to form our final bottom, which aligns with this low right here. This is going to be based off the 20,800 area, our supply, our demand zone, which is now becoming a demand zone, which is where we could get our bounce. On the QQQ, looks bearish. On the daily and the weekly, are making lower highs right now. I anticipate the same trend is going to continue for the time being. So look for an attempt to get back up to about the 510 or so area near our 510 to 512 resistance near the 200 EMA. Then we could be looking for a move lower. We might be returning back down to about 504, if not below. That's where this imbalance is over here. And then I think ultimately what's going to happen is as we approach February, we might be looking for a breakout. We want to break this blue line of resistance, and then this could be looking for a move back up to about the 520s, 530s. There's going to be a nice rally coming, possibly because of big tech earnings. That could be the catalyst. We'll have to see about that. But for now, look for a move like this, a rebound tomorrow, an attempt to get back up to 510 to 512, and then a rejection potentially coming. And then the market may be forming its final bottom for a big rally. Same thing with Apple. I think something very similar is going to pan out because Apple's at this very, very strong. This is previous resistance becoming support at 236 to 235. What typically happens is we rebound a bit before we form our bottom. I'm not sure if the bottom is in yet. It did drop quite a bit. But what's going to happen is we're going to try to rebound here because we formed a wick down here. So I'm going to be looking for an attempt to get back close to about 240, which could lead to a rejection again for another retest just like this. But then we're going to be bottoming very soon. Maybe earnings can be the factor that affects this. It depends on earnings. Typically, Apple does well, so I'm hoping we do get some kind of rebound afterwards as we get into February, just like this. That's what could be forming on Apple. A little rebound, a rejection, and move back up. So it depends on earnings, but I find this to be the most likely technical move because we've been dumping quite a bit. With that being said, that's it for the main ones I typically go over in this video. I'm going to talk about the rest of them, but very, very briefly. So just bear with me if I'm going kind of fast. For Netflix, very similar setup. It's been dumping quite a bit. Looks a bit more bearish on the 4-hour and the daily. So I think that this is going to continue to see downside. I don't think we're done yet, but we're at this support right here. There's a support right here. This is going to cause a little rebound, possibly to about just under 850 or so. Then this could continue to dump back down to form its final bottom around like the 820 zone before it tries to bounce like this. I'll be looking for a move just like that. For others out there, we have Palantir. Palantir is barely at the 4-hour 200 EMA as support. It's trying to form a base here. I think it's going to base very soon, so I'm going to be looking for a move just like that. I think that this is going to rebound a bit to about 68 or so, 68 to 70. But then we could continue to get one more rejection before it tries to bounce into the 60s. So look for a small rebound to 68 to 70, see if we get a rejection on Palantir tomorrow. For Supermicro, we have something very similar developing. It's consolidating right now, just like Nvda. Might try to push with Nvda for about the 33.5 area to about 34, but then it could reject again as it's very choppy. So just look for a lot of chop and a small push to 34. For Celsius, looks a little bit more bearish. Might retest at 27.5, then reject to start dipping closer to about the 26s. And we'll see if we get a bounce or not, so just keep that in mind. For the Russell, I want to mention that we're doing a pretty good job, at least thus far. We're technically on a downtrend. Okay, we're continuing to make lower highs, and just keep that in mind that that could have a big effect on other factors. But I think that there's a good chance we continue to downtrend, at least on the Russell. We might attempt to push close to about 218 to 220, then reject. But then I think we're going to be forming a final bottom very soon. So just keep that in mind. I don't think we're done yet with the downside. I think there's still a little bit more as we have this very bearish trend here. So I'm watching to see if we get some kind of rebound like this, or rebound like this before it starts dipping to this bottom. And then we should be looking for a bounce very soon, hopefully around that 214 area. I'm looking for a move just like that, as the most likely possibility. So keep that in mind. For others out there, just to be very quick, we have AMD. AMD is technically on a bit of a downtrend. This is going to likely dip a little bit more. I do see some weakness on this chart. We could be approaching this 110 area, which is where we had previous support in the past. We have previous resistance becoming support, so that's going to be where we might be heading towards before it tries to bounce. So look for a little bit more downside on AMD. ARM is going to likely retest 137, maybe even close to like 133. Look for a little bit more downside to 135 to 133 before it tries to bounce. For coin, we have a very similar setup. We're technically on a bit of a downtrend, but it's trying to hold support here. So because of Bitcoin, I wouldn't be surprised if this wick right here forms a nice barrier and we test our 20 EMA at 264 or so, maybe a little bit above that, but then we could be looking for one more move down for this to form a bottom. It's going to bottom very, very soon. So look for a little rebound and a rejection. And I think that this will eventually try to range trade to base just like this before it sees some kind of like move higher. That's what I'm anticipating for coin, something like this, a nice looking double bottom that could be forming. So keep that in mind. For others out there, such as like Amazon, we're not at our 200 EMA yet. I think we might get closer to it. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do something like this. We try to rebound off this 218 zone to hit 220. Then we could reject and eventually make our way down to the 200 EMA. And then this is where I think we're going to base near 215 for a big bounce as we get into February. So watch for a move like that on Amazon, especially with Trump's inauguration coming up. Meta is showing some strength compared to the markets, kind of range bound. But as long as we're above 612, I think we could be bouncing for the 620s. We've dumped quite a bit, making lower highs. So we could be looking for a dip here, then a rebound. So look for a move like that. For Microsoft, we're on a downtrend. Technically, we're making lower highs here. We could be looking for a move back up to about the 423 area. Watch the support. We have a double bottom here. So as long as the support holds, we could look for a rebound for 423 tomorrow. For a small bounce, we're just going to help the QQQ bounce as well. And we'll see if we get a rejection off our 200 or 20 EMA or not. Just like this, excuse me, just like this to form a base. And eventually, this will eventually bottom depending on CPI and other factors for this thing to start bouncing. So just keep that in mind. And then we also happen to have, let me just double check this. Google looks a little bit more bearish. It might dip closer to about the 190 zone before it tries to bounce. So just keep that in mind. We're range bound right now, but I think it's going to be dipping closer to 190 before we see some buyers step in. With that being said, that's it for my video. Just a few more things. Just know that DJT, it may be making a big move very soon because of Trump's inauguration. But for now, I do think this might try to retest 36 flat. It's very flat right now. It's been like that for the last couple of weeks. The VIX is looking a little bit more bullish, might retest the 20 EMA before it tries to break out a little higher. But despite the VIX doing that, don't forget there's still a lot of gaps for it to fill below, and the VIX will get a rejection eventually when the market bounces. We're not ready yet, so the VIX is bullish. The market's bearish overall. Might be a small dip tomorrow before it tries to bounce as the market tries to bounce and rejects. I think that's what's going to happen. It has a little bit more upside coming, but then eventually the VIX is going to be forming its top and it's going to get a big rejection. I think that's the most likely possibility, and I think that the market will eventually base. The 10 years bullish. It depends on inflation, so we'll have to see what that leads to. We're waiting for CPI. Same thing with the dollar. It's elevated right now, but we'll see how CPI affects this. In anticipation of high inflation, the dollar is pushing. So just keep that in mind. We'll see how things go with CPI. Anyways, the market is still technically on a more bearish structure. Yes, we could see a small rebound tomorrow, but then there's going to be a risk of us dipping a little bit lower again. I still think we could drop a little bit more, and then eventually the market's going to base, and there's going to be a really, really nice buying opportunity because I think that there will be a big bounce coming soon. I think that as we get closer to February, the market's going to bounce. Most likely after Trump's inauguration, I think that's going to have a big effect, not to mention the big earnings. So we'll see how it goes. Anyways, that's what my view is. We'll have to see if things end up holding up. With that being said, I thank you for listening. Have a good rest of your day. Have a good Sunday as we have the playoffs going on in the NFL. So I hope you guys enjoy that. Until I see you guys again tomorrow morning before market open, have a good weekend and peace out.